check out Cajun Lights, your complete dog hunting outfitter. Tracking equipment, leashes, collars, dog supplies, and much, much more. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. And don't forget their outstanding lineup of lights. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app, besides the podcast app, to listen to this here podcast? I use onX. onX Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open onX and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within onX. You need to check out onX Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com. Click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to onX Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with onX. Elite nutrition products are the hottest thing on the market right now for dog and horse owners. And Houndsman XP is a dealer. You can find all their products on our website at houndsmanxp.com. Over the past 5 years, you've tuned into this podcast, and I don't take it lightly. We have built a mutual trust. And when I recommend a product, it's because I believe in it, I use it, and I'm given my seal of approval for that. I'm putting my name on that. And with Elite Nutrition products, I do trust it. I do use it. I've seen great results with their essential dogs, their pre and probiotics, their tick-borne disease treatment. It's all natural. It's a great alternative to pharmaceuticals when used appropriately. If you expect extreme performance, you need Elite Nutrition. Available from houndsmanxp.com.
I had a finished goshawk. It was a nice, calm bird. It was. I got it from a breeder in Ontario. I remember flying it at jackrabbits, and it had taken a couple of young ones, and we were in a field, in a treed area, and it caught a horned owl. Took it right out of the air. At first, I went, "Wow, that's really cool," and then I realized it was horned owl. So I get there, and the owl's got both the goshawk's legs. The goshawk's got both owl's legs. So it was like a standstill. Like, we're even here. So, like, what do you do?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast. Thanks again for joining me on here, as always. And our episode this week features Ken Hooke, which most of you know as a hood maker, and many of you, I'm sure, have plenty of hoods that Ken has made. I know I have several for red tails and one for my Harris's hawk, and unfortunately, since the recording of this, I think he has once again decided to retire from hood making. So if any of you out there were wanting to get a hood from him, then I hope you were able to. He makes great red tail hoods especially, and really, really good quality. So I'm very happy with mine, and am looking forward to using the red-tailed hoods that I got from him in hopefully the coming season. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this episode and talk to Ken some about hood making and his prior falconry, flying eagles, accipiters, and all kinds of other cool stuff in this episode. So enjoy. Here we go. Nice to kind of meet you, sort of in person, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not one to have my pictures taken. I'm not one to do anything like this. So I wouldn't say count yourself lucky, but I may never do this again.
Well, hopefully it'll be a semi-enjoyable experience for you.
Oh, I think it will.
It's always cool seeing people for the first time, and I've been so fortunate to be able to make acquaintances and friends with so many people all around the world and stuff. And,
Sure.
and as you know, I've already kind of done a series based around Canadian falconers, and it's nice to be able to kind of do a little addendum here and add another one to that list, especially one such as yourself that's kind of known for hood making and other things. And so yeah, thanks again for taking the time. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, sir.
Cool. Well, to start off with, remind me again where exactly you're at in Canada. I can't remember.
I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which basically is in the center of Canada, about 100 kilometers, so maybe 60 miles from the U.S. border. 8-hour drive due south is Minneapolis.
Okay. Yeah, I know where Minneapolis is, so that helps. Okay. I'm an idiot when it comes to geography. I've said many times. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's so it would probably take me about 15 hours or so to drive to you. I think it would take me roughly somewhere between 8 to 10 hours, I think, to drive to Minneapolis, if I remember right.
Okay, so and then tag on another 8.
Yeah. So yeah, it's who knows, but I would have to double check that. But I have actually been up through areas of Wisconsin and Minnesota briefly, before. Okay. Actually it was back in the day whenever I did a little mini tour with an old band I was in. I did a little regional, like 5-date thing through those states. And that's the only time, to my recollection anyway, that I've been up through there. But so have you lived all the way or up there? Like basically, have you lived up there your whole life? Or?
I've born and raised just outside of Winnipeg. I lived in British Columbia for, I think, about six years. At that time, I wasn't making a lot of money. Not really involved in falconry, but just getting my feet wet. And I realized I would never be able to afford a home in British Columbia. So I moved back to Manitoba and been there ever since. And now the Vancouver market, I lived about 20 minutes outside of Vancouver. The house prices are just crazy now. So I think I made a good decision, and I don't mind the winters here. I mean, we get a bad reputation. We have some very cold winters, but 40 days a year I can live with. So
we've had some bad winters down here, but especially during falconry season, the last 5 or 6 years, it seems like we've had very mild winters, and I don't really know if there's a cause for that. I won't start the whole global warming conversation, but
don't go there.
But
that's one topic I don't want to discuss.
No, we don't get into that kind of stuff on here. Okay. It's all good, but bottom line is your logic is as good as mine when it comes down to that explanation. I mean, like, I remember the first couple of falconry seasons that I was kind of involved in getting out, and we had a couple of pretty good snows, and it was really nice. But like the last handful of seasons, man, we've had some stretches where it'll be like, 20s 1 week, and then like a couple days later it'll be like 60, and then it'll go back down to 20 something again or whatever. I mean, we have a lot of temp swings here, and
fluctuation.
Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, but I'm assuming up north you don't really have to deal with that too awful much whenever you're out and about.
We don't get the real big swings. Yeah, we don't get the real big swings, but it'll go 20, 30 below Celsius, and then in a week's time, maybe just below freezing or above freezing for a day or two, and then back to reality for our winter. But you make the best of it. Hawking can be challenging when it's minus 30, minus 40. I have a friend that hunts partridge and grouse, and he was mentioning one time that, those guys are so lucky. I don't know how they do it in the wintertime. And my answer was, their cold ain't like our cold. So when it's too cold here, it's too cold for anything. I mean, I couldn't imagine flying a bird. You're just, taking a chance and risking the bird, but some do. Some did back in the day, and kudos, I tip my hat to them. I'm too old for that now. Not a chance.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd probably be the same way, but I mean, I guess there would be, if you are going to take that chance, I guess the only added benefit to that would be, you could fly your birds fat as hell and it probably would be okay because, I mean, you almost probably have to because, I mean, like you said, you try and lower weight much in those temperatures and you're going to have a sick or probably dead bird on your hands if you something goes wrong.
Yeah, before too long. But,
yeah. Well, so what are you flying these days?
I have a 12, 13-year-old Saker. I've flown bald eagles. I've flown ferruginous hybrids, red tails, Finnish goshawks. I just hunt white-tailed jackrabbits. That's all I hunted, and then I had a pair of Saluki hounds that I ran with the Falcons. Successful, very short season. Once the snow cover was too deep and or too cold, the dogs just weren't going to run. It's just too cold for them. But the last few years, I haven't flown very much. Not a lot of game. Not a lot of jackrabbits within a 40-minute drive. And, I think my best hawking is behind me now. My knees are bad. And so my best hawking is behind me. But I still have a Saker. I fly her to the lure. And when we do have early season, nice weather, she'll hunt some young jackrabbits, but once they turn white, she just shows no interest anymore to them. So we pack it up.
And how old did you say that bird was?
I believe she's, 7, probably 15, 14, 15, 16-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, once they start getting to that age, I mean, sure, you can still game hawk them some, but they start to, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't really talked to anybody yet, especially from up your way at all that has kind of done that, especially with sight hounds and stuff like that. So, that's pretty interesting. I mean, overall, how many years do you think you really did that consistently? I mean, how many? Well, let me rephrase the question. How many of your good years? How many of your good years did you really have
with the hounds, or just with bird and hound? Like either
or total.
I flew a couple of rehab eagles that did well on jackrabbits. I had a male, 6 pounds, not a big one, not a big male, but loved flying at deer. We have white-tailed deer here, and that bird would fly them and grab their head and just harass them. He was never, ever going to take one down, but they were great flights. Finnish goshawk, she took some jackrabbits, but I made the mistake of flying her on some ducks. Found a sweet little honey hole. And after the ducks, I'm not chasing those guys anymore. And so maybe a dozen good years of taking quarry, not tons, only because of the weather. When it gets too cold, the birds would sit up in a tree, and their whole goal was to keep their feet warm.
Sure. Yeah, it's like that here too, for sure. Yeah, whenever it gets really cold, whenever we do have that occasional really cold snap, it's almost pointless to even to get out because you'll let the bird go and they'll fly up in the tree, get right in the middle of the tree, close to the center, and pull up a foot, and then puff up, and you're just done. Yeah, and here it doesn't take much. I mean, if you start getting much under 20 degrees, even I mean, like even your red tails and stuff like that, you know, once you get into the mid-teens or low teens or whatever, it's like all they want to do, like you said, is keep warm. It's kind of a bummer. Yeah.
So I've had some great years, flown quite a few different types of birds, but the combination of a falcon and sighthounds, if you've never seen it, is unmatched in my opinion. But I've never really flown birds that would go up, 1,500 feet and stoop at a duck or a grouse, which I'm sure are incredible. And I've seen flights, but watching the dogs and the rabbits, the dogs and the bird and the jackrabbits, I flew them with a snowmobile and a quad. So I was able to kind of watch everything. For the first few years, they would chase it, and then that was fun, and they're a mile away, and then you got to get in your car and go, find them, and the dogs and the bird were either on a kill or kind of waiting. Where are you? But I wisened up and bought a quad and a snowmobile, which just opened up a whole new barrel of monkeys to you, and you could watch, and it was super exciting. But again, short season. The areas that I flew, if we got any rain or any moisture, the soil just became like gumbo. You couldn't drive on it. You couldn't put a quad on it. The dogs, after 5 minutes, would have mud all over their feet. They couldn't run. So you wait till the soil dries up. That takes 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Then you get 3 or 4 good hawking days, and then it happens again. And then it gets too cold. So, and I can make, falconers, we can make excuses till the cows come home. But it's a legit complaint.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much a tradition for the most part. Anytime you get your bird out of the box, you just run through the list. Well, we had this, whatever. It's like, well, you may have fed a little bit too much yesterday. I'm just going ahead and putting this all out there. It's Falconers and the opinions and excuses. It's always a fun time with that. But yeah, no, I would assume that the terrain up there would be pretty tough to navigate if you don't have the right equipment, the right resources, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are legitimate and valid, like the little things to work around for sure. I mean, if you don't, if you're not able to get around, you're not able to get out. Well, it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to really be able to get a whole lot accomplished.
Yeah. I remember talking to, I think the gentleman's name was Terrence Wright from New Mexico. I think it was near Albuquerque, and we talked a lot when I was starting this whole madness. And, they never had that problem. Semi-arid desert area, and so it was tough to relate. Tom Donald in Saskatchewan, which is the next province to the west, he was probably the first guy in North America to do that, fly with the Salukis and the Falcon, but he had some hilly grasslands, didn't have that issue. And he kind of lived in a banana belt of Canada, if you can believe it, or not, in the middle of Saskatchewan, milder temperatures, and didn't have any of the issues I had to, that I ran into. So it was a learning curve for several years. Again, the quad and the snowmobile, not so much the snowmobile later on, just because of the snowpack, but the quad just opened up a whole new scope of falconry with the dogs and bird.
Sure. Well, and I've there's other guys too. Like I know, like are you familiar with Greg Rayburn?
Oh yes, yeah. I've never talked to him, but I've seen many videos, and I think him and Terrence were in cahoots for a while. And great flights, and superb falconer, bird, dogs, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's doing the same deal down there, and I know he invested in one of those e-bikes, I think, for his terrain. Yeah, those electric bikes or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Some of those flights would have to go for a while and go pretty far, and I know it would be hard for me not to want to invest in something like that also if I was doing that pretty consistently. It's something I definitely want to see in person. I just haven't been able to yet. Whenever I was down through New Mexico last, I hit up Greg, and of course the one weekend that I was there is the one weekend that he had other stuff going on, and
that's too bad.
couldn't meet up with him, but yeah, I mean that's one form of hawking that I still haven't seen in person yet that I'd really like to see. It's still on the bucket list for sure. But
good. Well, good luck on that. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, I think you either go, wow, that's really neat, or the dog and the birds are a mile away, and you go, wow, that was exciting. There's nothing to see. So
yeah,
again, a bike or a quad or something, horseback, it was done traditionally. Totally different game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just what I would need also, is another very expensive animal to take care of and buy and everything also. Yeah, trust me, I have talked now to, I've talked to Harry, I've talked to, a few other people that have done the whole horseback thing. And hey, if you can combine a third animal into that whole equation, to be a partner and stuff, great, all the power to you. There's no way in hell I don't think I could do it. I just not for me, I don't think.
Oh,
but no, I'll just yeah,
not the horse.
I'll just spend the X amount of $1,000 on the e-bike or whatever, or just get my ass back into shape and lose 20 to 30 pounds again and just try and keep up that way, I guess. But
it'll never happen. You can't keep up. Trust me, I was in good shape back then, and you can't keep up. The dogs are running 30 miles an hour chasing a jackrabbit. That was really good. And unless they happen to turn the jackrabbit to come at you, but it never works out that way. That's the best laid plans, but that never happens. So I think you could lose a lot of weight. Get a quad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna just make the assumption that an Olympic sprinter or long distance runner probably still wouldn't be able to probably keep up. But yeah. Well, no, I mean that's cool that you're another. I didn't realize that you did that. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I like talking to all these guys that have done that before. But I mean, whenever you got into all that, I mean, did you, just real quick, I mean, kind of button up this topic a little bit, is whenever you were training your bird and your dogs, how much of a learning curve was it for you? I mean, whenever you were trying to figure all that stuff out, was it hard?
It was simple. It was like the dogs knew exactly what they were for. I remember when I first got the dogs and I had a bird, and the bird was on a perch. I put a bath beside her. Dogs came immediately right beside the perch, drank from her water dish, and then laid right beside the bird. It was like, I know what my job is now. Dogs immediately started chasing jackrabbits. I trained the falcon on a lure, just throwing a lure and running behind it. And within 4 days, the first saker I had was chasing jackrabbits. So it was just a matter of them getting the dogs running and the bird going, and away you go. And then it's ultimate craziness until they're out of sight. So the learning was very, very simple. Dogs knew exactly what to do. The bird knew exactly what to do, and let them go.
So did you start the dogs and the bird at the same time? I mean, were they all fresh, like new to the game at the same time, or?
Yep. The dogs, I didn't run them hard for a year. I let their bone structure mature, and then basically the bird knew that a jackrabbit is what to chase, and the dogs instinctively knew what to chase. And I can remember the very first flight, walking in a field, had the dogs on a leash, bird on the fist. I had to stop in the middle of the field to go to the washroom, and I looked down, unzippered, I looked down, and there was a jackrabbit 10 feet from me, and zipped up, unhooked the dogs. I took the leash off the bird and took like 4 steps, and that was it. The chase was on. And we didn't catch that one, but we caught the second one. So it was very easy learning curve for everybody.
So in other words, you're probably like the worst and best at the same time spokesperson for this form of falconry that's probably in existence right now, because you're just like, it's so easy and everything. All you got to do is walk out into a field, act like you're going to take a leak, and then everything just happens magically.
Everything falls into place.
That's hilarious. No, that's so funny. It's great. It's always great hearing about this stuff, these different experiences, because you talk to one person and it might be the hardest thing in the world or something, right? And you talk to another person and they're just like, yeah, just go in a field, act like you're going to take a leak, and everything magically falls into place. It's so funny, like listening to these stark, contrasts and experience.
And how people get started.
Yeah.
For me, it was easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's awesome. And, did you have have you had in your time then? I mean, how many more dogs and falcons did you have? Was that pretty much your one and only team doing that form of falconry, or?
Flew the bird. I had, I think, 4 birds that flew with the dogs, the same dogs, and they got older. I can remember I flew a Gyr Saker, and the first Saker I had loved the dogs, but when she was chasing rabbits, she would hit the dogs. She would just hit them in the back of the head, hit them on the rear end. And she had been flown at jackrabbits on her own. So I couldn't fly that bird at the dogs. The dogs were terrified of her. The 2 Gyr Sakers I had, not a problem. Lost them both on November the 17th, a year apart.
Wow.
Flew them. I can remember the flight. The dogs were running. The falcon was right behind the dogs, chasing a jackrabbit, and they came up to a field of about 600 ducks. They were on a cornfield that had just been cut down, and it was chaos in the air. Never found the bird. Telemetry didn't work. A year later, the exact same day, almost the exact same scenario, lost another bird. So never flew on that date again. And then I got the bird that I have now, and never had any of those problems. She liked the dogs. She never hit the dogs. So yeah, it sounded like it was all easy, but I had some pretty scared dogs that first year. So, because the bird would just hit them.
Yeah, it's kind of that's a really common theme, with birds that hunt with dogs. It seems, whenever there's that impatience factor, or there's that just, why the hell aren't you doing what you're supposed to do for me?
Exactly.
And so it's well, I mean, that's unfortunate. That's the first time I think that I've heard that kind of coincidental irony, so to speak, when the same date, a year apart, all that kind of stuff. That's the first, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And same field.
Same field. Jeez.
Same field.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking about that recently with some other guys, that seems like every falconer has kind of like a curse spot, where it's just like no matter where they go, the vibe and the aura of the place just spells out instant doom to
no matter what.
Yeah, it seems like every person, and it's funny because another guy could fly the spot and be absolutely fine, but if you fly it, it's like, it's just like instant bad luck, instant bad karma, just to be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and I
don't know.
remember Terrence goes, yeah. Terrence made a comment. You know what? You just had some bad luck, and that's all it was. I mean, I never flew on November. I think it was 17th.
Yeah.
Again, never did. So.
Well, I mean, everybody figures out what works for them and what doesn't.
Yeah, that's right.
So well, and let's go ahead and kind of switch gears a little bit, and then go back to the origins, so to speak. I mean, how old were you roughly, and what were the circumstances that kind of led you to even get into all this, get interested
In falconry?
Yeah, and falconry in general. Yeah.
My dad brought home a little kestrel when I was in grade school. I don't know, maybe grade 6, 5 maybe, and raised it. I was feeding it Dr. Ballard's canned dog food. Had no idea what to do. Had never heard of falconry, and had him on my shoulder going to school on my bike. And I kind of looked at it, and it took off. And that was it. Bird was gone. But I thought, wow, that was pretty cool having a falcon or like a kestrel. I don't even think I knew kestrel was a falcon. Fast forward till I was late mid-20s, moved to British Columbia, where the falconry was big in the Lower Mainland. There were some spectacular falconers. Frank Beebe was from there, and started watching, started talking, and that hooked me onto falconry. Then the home situation, unfortunately, a divorce, and then had to move back to Manitoba, where falconry was illegal, and put it on the back burner for years, decades. And then Manitoba opened up, had a red tail the first fall I could. And it just kind of fell into place. So a lot of years in between.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question that I actually asked. Was I know that the provincial laws have been pretty different, from province to province, and there's a lot of changes, that's happened in Canada over the years. But that was going to be my next question, was how that affected you with all that. I roughly, what year did it get legalized where you're at then?
It got legalized in 1990. I think it was 96. So I immediately got a bird. 2 years prior, some gentleman wanted to buy all my Goshawks, and I said, "Well, come by the house and you can have them. They've been sitting in a box for 10 years, whatever it was." And he never showed up. And then in the paper, I read falconry is now legal. And I went, "Oh, good thing I didn't get rid of my old Goshawks," and started. But each province, I think, has bizarre regulations. We can't have eagles here, and we can't have peregrines. But we can have peregrine hybrids. You can have peregrines in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, in British Columbia, not Manitoba. And there's some reasons why that is, which I won't get into, but political reasons. Ontario had some different regulations as well, but they have a big club there, and their people do well with get regulations with the government, so they've got their act together in Ontario. Saskatchewan had great regulations, and I understand they've had some issues with their government, which I'm not totally aware what the stipulations are, but they've had some issues. So Alberta, I don't really know much about, and British Columbia, I don't know much about.
Yeah, it's always a constant work in progress, isn't it? It's I just every so often you gain a couple steps and you take one back, and I mean, there's always work behind the scenes going on, and I didn't realize how much there was until I started talking to and becoming more familiar with other falconers that hold positions on, in NAFA and in other state clubs and things like that. It's been kind of eye-opening for sure. And I look at things a lot differently now than I used to when it comes to, the work and the time, effort, and energy that goes into all that. But I mean, at least you're able to get to where you could practice again and fly birds and get to having fun with all that again. But I mean, so you started back with a red tail, you said?
Yeah, with a red tail and a male saker. The saker I didn't do much with. I flew the bird. It was the first falcon I really had to fly, so I learned about the saker. But red tail, I flew, I think 3 red tails at white tails, and was successful on them. But once they got beaten up, they just, like lots of other birds, I'm not going there anymore. We have a lot of cottontails in the city limits, but I always felt uneasy flying within the city. So I didn't pursue it, and had a ferruginous hybrid who caught a few, but that bird just hated the cold. And that bird would not sit on a glove, so I used to just throw it off. It'd land on the ground, and once it got snow on the ground, the bird, my feet are cold, and it was basically stay warm, not tough to fly. So try to gambit the birds, and then the falcon and the hounds came into place.
Well, and when you say ferruginous hybrid, I'm assuming a hybrid with a red tail.
Yeah, hybrid with a red tail. I had a wonderful bird. It was a Harris hawk, a red tail. Great bird. I believe it was the first one ever bred. A gentleman named John Hitchmo in BC. The Harris lost its mate. The red tail lost its mate. He put them together, and they had one offspring. He tame hacked that bird for a year. He didn't know what to do with it, and he was a falcon guy. He bred falcons to go to the Middle East, etc. And I just remember him telling me, I used to go out, throw a quail, bird would come down and grab it and go off, and some days it wouldn't come back, other days it would coming around for food, and then somebody said, you should catch that bird, I'll buy it. So John trapped up the bird. Actually, I don't even think he trapped it. I think he just threw the quail and walked up to the bird. Bird was really tame, big. It was a fair-sized bird, and I ended up with that bird for a couple of years, and then I sent it to a breeder in Ontario. So the ferruginous red tails were good birds, quick birds, could easily catch up with the jackrabbits, but I think the foot size gave them some issues. Jackrabbits are, obviously big rabbits. Took some, but once, and you'll talk to other people, once they get that winter coat, that big fluffy white coat, it's a different game for them. Birds have trouble actually grabbing the bird or the rabbit. They'll grab a ton of hair. I pull probably more fur with my birds than anybody alive. But bringing them home sometimes is a lot tougher. Once they get that winter coat, it's a different game.
I bet, and they have to really learn to get up to the head too, and sometimes that walk up the back to the head, to where the off button is. It takes them a bit to learn that sometimes too. But yeah, I can imagine once that other coat would come in and it'd be kind of like dove feathers almost. They just shed so easily, and exactly. I can imagine how that would pose problems and turn a bird off for sure. But it's interesting. and I still haven't talked to too many guys, or I really haven't talked to really anybody for the most part yet. That, I mean, I know there's been some people that have had some pretty decent success with like the Farouk red tail hybrids and some different combos like that. I really haven't talked to many of them yet, but like I said, that's another thing that's kind of neat to hear about. I mean, I just, but I understand the reticence and not wanting to hunt in urban environments also. Unfortunately, that's a lot of what I got right now, in our area. It is what it is. I'm trying to, that's why I'm kind of glad that have kind of gotten into squirrel hawking and enjoyed that a lot, because you've got a lot more country,
exactly.
Rural, type settings for that kind of thing potentially. But yeah, well, I mean, and so once again, kind of switching, topics a little bit. I mean, at what point then did you decide to take on the ever so
The madness?
diverse, the madness? So I guess madness would be a good, talk to many hood makers. They especially talk about how it becomes madness for sure. They all reach a burnout phase and stuff, but which sounds like you kind of did recently too. But like, what made you get into hood making, and what was the fascination there?
When I was in British Columbia, I met a gentleman named Dennis Maines, who took me under his wing for about 6 months and showed me how to glue hoods. And then I had to move back to Manitoba, had that huge time away from falconry, didn't even think about it. And I had a rehab eagle. And I wanted to make, Dennis made me some hoods, but I wanted a slip-on hood, one that had no braces, that you could just slip on the bird's head. And got in touch with a gentleman in the UK named Alan Gates. He sent me some patterns. Made slip-on hoods for about 2 years. That's all I did was work on making slip-on hoods. And I remember I saw a picture of a hood with a pointed top. And I went, that's the coolest hood I've ever seen. And I hunted everywhere to find a hood pattern like that. Found one similar, played with the pattern, came up with what I called the con hood, which is basically an angle hood with a pointed top, and that just snowballed into what it is today. Made lots of them, sold lots of them, burned out a few times, and I saw a picture of. Actually, Dennis Maines sent me some pictures of a John Moran hood with all the artwork in it, and I was hooked. I thought, that's where I'm going, making my hoods. I want them to be an art piece. Of course, I wanted them to fit, but I wanted them to be art. I've got a background in fine arts at the University of Manitoba. Always drew, bit of an artist. And that first John Moran hood, the photos that I saw, I was hooked. I had to make hoods like that. And 25 years later, still doing it.
Yeah, I know when I was in the UK for the first time, well, I guess I should say I haven't been back yet, but when I got my chance a couple years ago now, it seems crazy to even say that it's already been a couple years, but when I was there for the first time, I got a chance to meet Steve Housel and a few other guys, and gosh, some of the hoods that Steve had, I was just like, man, I really want those, but there's no way in hell I would ever use them. They're just too pretty. They're just way too beautiful. And I was just like, man, I would be happy to spin that. It's a whole other version of the whole original art thing. And as we were talking the other day, when we talked on the phone to plan this, that's combining two of my biggest vices, so to speak, together. I mean, it seemed like a great idea at the time, but then I was just like, Yeah, I don't know how I get home. I don't know how to be able to afford. I would be able to afford to get home. I'm going to start blowing all my money, like while I'm over here and be stranded, and so, but yeah, I mean, there's some of these hoods that I'm just like, there would be no way. I'd be afraid. I'd be scared, to use them. I mean,
to use
and
them.
like you said, yeah, I mean, you ultimately want hoods to be practical and you want to be able to use them if you're buying them. But at the same time, there's some that you're just like, there's no way in hell that thing's going on a shelf and never coming out ever again.
Well, I guess the one thing positive about that is if you make a work of art and it's a beautiful hood with artwork and carved leather, you don't have to worry about it fitting. So as a hood maker, you have fun, make a hood. Who cares if it fits? You're just going to stick it on a glass shelf anyway. And I say that tongue in cheek, but I've been accused of, all your hoods don't fit, but they're sure works of art. That's why you do it. And I'm going, well, I'd like to combine the two, good fitting and artistic. But some people have made a point. I didn't buy it to wear. I bought it to stick on a shelf. So the prettier they are, the better.
Yeah, there's definitely a handful that I have that probably are never going to go on a bird.
Of course,
yeah. I mean, it's fortunate and unfortunate at the same time, but yeah, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, it's to me, it's no different than some of the other types of things that we spend money on and then it just stays on a wall or stays on Yeah. I mean, what's the difference between that and a painting that goes on the wall? Is the way I look at it. But well, and so I've asked this question to a lot of different hood makers that I've had the good fortune to be able to talk to through this media and stuff. Is I mean, how long do you think it took you before you were making a hood that you felt comfortable, like you're actually selling and kind of marketing and putting your stamp of approval and your name on?
That's a good question. The slip-on hoods were just for personal use. When I developed this con hood, and I probably made 50, 60 hoods that I would send out to people. Try this. Give me your feedback. So 70, 80 hoods before I felt comfortable that it would be a comfortable hood for the bird. It was the look that I wanted. All the other artwork and tooling and everything came later. So, maybe 60, 50 to 100 hoods. It's funny. I see pictures. I mean, the social media thing, Facebook and all these forums, etc. Hood makers starting out have it so easy now. And not that I was under hardship or anything like that, but you see a person that makes a hood and tries to make it as fancy as he can. And I'm sorry, young fellow, but you can't put that on a bird. I suggest you learn how to make a hood that fits first and is good at it. Is good, you get good at that, then do all the other stuff. But they'll make one hood, make it all fancy, spend $100 on leather and stingray or lizard, and I'm sorry, you feel sorry for the bird. You put that on. So take your time, learn how to perfect your craft first before you start doing all the other stuff. Most importantly, make sure it fits. Make sure it fits the bird.
For sure. Yeah. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I've noticed that, all the different hoods that I still have to send you pictures. I forgot to take pictures to send you, of all the hoods that I have too. I like swapping, pics and stuff of, the collections, so to speak.
Sure.
But of all the hoods that I've bought and used over the years, one thing that I've noticed is, ironically enough, it's like the more cheaply made, the hood is, and the more like pliable and flexible and stuff, like the hood is, it seems like the more likely it is that the bird is going to love it. And like it's weird, and this might just be something that maybe I'm just being an idiot or whatever, or just but like, like the ones that you can buy for $5, in mass sometimes, that are really pliable and stuff, that you cheaply made. Sure, they don't last very long, but like but those types of hoods that are super light and ultra pliable like that, they're the ones I've seen that the birds just take to really quickly, and they don't really try and shake and all that kind of stuff. And I think there's a lot that goes into the whole, lighter weight. I mean, it's super easy to understand why, especially like your micro hood guys, the guys that become really proficient in that realm, really, really like harp on as little or as less weight as possible, the better, and so on and so forth. Like you get to understand that stuff. But I mean, what's been your experience? Have you noticed that, or have you kind of had that experience also, where you've noticed that that's kind of a thing?
I used to buy some, and the leather's soft, and got to remember those. A lot of the makers are from overseas, and they make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds a month. So, and when they're selling them to markets in the Middle East, who are buying 50, 60, 70 at a time, you're bound to get it right. So I mean, there's something to be said about their hoods. And they don't hold up as well or as long, but for somebody who does, is kind of on a budget, they make great hoods. Now there are hoods from overseas that are good quality, soft hoods that hold up, and then there's a totally different set of people that are selling the hoods that aren't very good hoods. But
sure,
no, I agree. I think you made a good point, because they're nice and soft, and they've made so many to fit, a peregrine falcon or a saker, as opposed to people over here. I've maybe made 100 saker hoods. They make 100 saker hoods in a day. So there's something to say about repeating the process over and over and over and over again. Their stitching is quality stitching. They know how to sew. Quality of the leather sometimes can be a little iffy, but to flip one on a bird and get a year out of it, I might be cutting my own throat. And other hood makers, there's nothing wrong with hoods in most cases, but they don't last.
Yeah,
in most cases.
Well, and on one hand, it's like, you wish the quality would be better in that regard, but at the same time, it's like, well, you understand almost in a way why they do it. It's almost kind of like a win-win situation for them, because then someone has to come back a year later and buy more, number one, but number two, by default, like it's, to be able to spit out that many hoods in that short of time, you almost kind of have to make concessions somewhere. And, if I'm paying, it's anymore. It's almost impossible to buy a hood here in the U.S. for less than $80 to $100, for the most part. I mean, on the low side, and I mean, there's in these other markets, like it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's annoying to buy hoods every year, but at the same time, like if I'm only paying like $15 or $20 for a hood or something, and the bird likes it, and I only get a year out of it. Well, I mean, but the way I justify it, of course, is I sit up on my high and mighty hood collecting throne, and I equally support hood makers from all over, all types. I've bought hoods from all kinds of different, sources, and like I said, I don't mind supporting all people from all over. Sure. I mean, and it's not just hoods too. I mean, I've become friends with several different types of equipment makers and stuff, and I'm a big fan of supporting other falconers and their endeavors as a whole. So
well, we appreciate it.
I'll just take the diplomatic approach in that regard,
There
I
you
guess.
go. And we also love dogs that chew their hoods. We love those dogs that chew hoods.
Yeah, I imagine. It's like, homework and hoods. Be the same kind of same kind of category, I guess. But no, that's cool though. And out of curiosity too, I have noticed, and I am kind of more biased towards this type of hood, especially for red tails. But has the whole like Anglo Indian design kind of become partial to you, not just to make but also to use, or is there kind of a bias there in that regard on both ends for you? Or
boy, that could open up a can of worms here. I'll just say this: the people that use my hoods, other Anglo hoods, Bryant Tar, the birds really, red tails especially, seem to appreciate a little bit wider fit at the head. They seem to, the Anglo Indian hoods, just fit differently from a Dutch hood, which is, in my opinion, a little tighter fit. Nothing negative with that, but I think for some species of birds, I think Indian hoods, Anglo hoods, molded Indian hoods, which is becoming a very popular style of hood right now, just fit some hawks better, or they seem to be more comfortable, and they're very user friendly. Have a tendency to have a bigger beak opening, which some people like, and I would agree with your statement there. The birds seem to like those hoods better. And personally, I like that style better. I've never really made Dutch hoods. I've made them. I like making them, but I've never really pursued that avenue. I like the Indian hoods and Indian hybrid hoods because I like the fit. I like the fit on them.
Well, and I would agree 100%. I mean, I think that, like some of your more, I guess, quote unquote, traditional types of falcons, like your peregrines, your prairies and stuff like that, I think for the most part, it's kind of like either or whatever. But I've noticed that just in the birds that I've had and flown and trained and all that, like, especially when it comes to your buteos and your most of your hawks and stuff, it seems like, just like you basically described, they tend to tolerate that wider, boxier, that wider design of those other types of hoods. And yes, sure, they'll tolerate the Dutch and stuff, but like there's just something about, they just don't like that extra, that more constrictive feel. They're not quite as, they'll tolerate it, but they're not quite as receptive to it. It seems.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% with that.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, like I said, I still need to, I talked to our mutual friend Heather the other day, and I've still got to order one or two of those. I need to have a few more of those in my arsenal, so to speak. As I was telling you on the phone the other day, man, there's just some of those red tails that you trap that just, they're these such like tweener size birds. You can't tell if it's like a big male or a small female or whatever. And you can have 6 to 8 like Dutch hoods, especially of all different sizes, and still not have one that fits like it should. And it's just like, it's the most annoying thing in the world, is to like have all these different assortment of hoods, and then like you go through a half a dozen to a little bit more of them, and you're just like, well, shit. It's just like, it sucks. So.
Yeah, Heather is selling, I made her some hoods, and it has a back tongue, which eliminates the feather pinching at the back of the neck. But even if the hood is off a little bit in size, that back tongue tucks in. It'll hold the hood nicely on the bird's head. And if the bird tolerates it, and the bird can't see and it does everything that you want it to do, you don't need to get another size. So I value that. I love making the hoods with the back tongue. I make a couple of styles of it, and I'm not here to promote my hoods or anything like that. But there's a lot of hood makers that don't offer that, and I think they should. I think that back tongue is worth their weight in gold for that scenario when you catch a bird that I don't know if it's a male or if it's a female. It's a little bit bigger than a male. It's a little bit smaller than a female, and the hoods work great. And that back tongue just is an equalizer, in my opinion, and that's why I've sold so many of them.
Well, and are you one of these guys too that doesn't really do the whole like half sizes also? Or are you mainly just, 20, 21, 22, 23, whatever? Like you don't really go like, the 0.5, route or whatever you.
But what I do sometimes though, is I'll make a size 19 hood and I'll put it on a 20 block. So it's a little bit tighter fit. You can only stretch them so much. So I do cheat that way, but I don't do the half sizes. Each size is approximately 2% increments. And again, but I will put a smaller hood on a block if I feel that it's necessary to fit the bird.
Cool. Well, that's another thing too. Some guys swear by that kind of thing. Others don't.
Sure.
It's just
whatever works for the hood maker and for the bird.
Sure. Well, cool. I know we could probably talk hoods the rest of the day, if we really wanted to, but
I'm just warming up for hoods.
Yeah. Well, and to that end, before we kind of start to sort of kind of wrap up a little bit, sure, are there any other thoughts or any other, for lack of better terms, opinions that you have on, kind of what your experience has been with the whole hood making deal? Or, is there any other like thoughts or sentiments that you have in that regard or observations?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think one of the biggest things that causes hood makers to be burned out is guy orders, girl orders a hood for female redtail. I'm gonna go trap a female redtail. They're really big from this area, so make it a big one. So you make a nice female redtail hood, send it out. 3 weeks later, the person traps the redtail, and it's a little tiny male. Now, it's their first bird they've ever trapped. I don't blame them. They want to keep that bird. And, and if it's really funky looking, melanistic, or it's leucistic, they're not going to let that bird go. But they will call me or send an email. Well, the hood doesn't fit. Well, how big's the bird? Oh, it's a little tiny male, and the hood's way too big. So I'll check my records. Well, yeah, you ordered a hood for a 44-ounce redtail, and you've got a 28-ounce male redtail. Of course, it's not going to fit. And they'll squeeze the braces, tighten the braces to make it fit, and they expect me as a hood maker to make them a smaller hood. They send that one back. It's scratched all to pieces. It's bent. It's all it's not formed anymore. And not only do they expect me to replace the hood at no charge, they expect me to then pay for their shipping to them, and then for me to pay for their shipping that they had to send it back to me. So I'm out. I've made no money, and he badmouths me for eternity. And buddy, it was your fault. So to people trapping birds, get a couple, get a male one, get a female one, get a big male and a small female, or stick with if your goal was to catch a female redtail, trap a female redtail. Don't blame it on the hood maker. And those complaints after a while, and not that you get many of them, but you get a couple that they're so irate at you. It's like, I don't need this. And heaven forbid if you get 3 or 4 in a year, it's like, okay, I said, I'm done. I'm not making hoods anymore. I'm going to make a hood. Here's the size 20. It's for a male redtail. If you want it, fine. If you don't buy it. I'm not guaranteeing the fit. And I think, in my opinion, that gives me the most grief and causes me to burn out more so than having 40 orders on your desk. It's some of the relationships that you have with customers, which is totally unreasonable. I mean, I will bend over backwards to assure a good fit. I've given away dozens and dozens of hoods. Don't worry about it. I'll make you another one. Because they ordered it for a female and they trapped a monster bird, or vice versa. And I'll just make them another one. Send me $10 for shipping. But I think if I could leave with that point, make sure you order enough hoods that will fit any bird that you trap.
And I would love to second that. I'm glad that you went that route with that, thought or whatever, because it's annoying to me also. Like, everybody goes through experiences, not just as a falconer, but in life, where you deal with very, very lax logic and, just not very, and working in healthcare, especially for like almost 2 decades now, it's like one of my favorite sayings is, your lack of urgency or your overall just, nonsense of urgency shouldn't become my emergency. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
And so to that end, I would second that and say, look, if you're not willing to at least buy 3 to 4 sizes of hoods at once to cover your bases, like you should probably, and you're really getting a species that really needs to be hooded. I mean, at a minimum of 2 sizes, at least,
Sure. Yeah.
You might want to rethink, your approach a little bit, because like I was just saying, sometimes you can have 6 sizes and have it still not fit, and if you have that and it's still, then it's just fate, like almost like you're just, it's just, once again, there's nothing you can chalk it up to as far as bad luck. But the bottom line is that it's not my fault, and it's especially not your fault. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, sometimes it just happens that way, and you just need to be. To me, it's no different than trying to be prepared with all forms of equipment. Not just hoods, but anklets, leashes, jesses, so on and so forth. Like, if you don't really have all that stuff in order, then yeah, I mean, we all go through moments in time where we're like, well, yeah, I should have been better prepared. Sure, I understand, especially when you're just learning and starting off in falconry. I mean, it happens, but as time goes on and, more and more things, happen throughout your falconry career and you get more experience, then that's just one of the things I think that you just need to kind of come to realize that there's certain things that you should be learning, and that's one of them. And if you like hooding your birds, you need to have quite an assortment in sizes, period, because you never know what you're going to get. I mean, it's the whole, trapping red tails especially is like that proverbial box of chocolates. You never know exactly what you're getting until you get it. You bring it home and you weigh it and you're just like, okay, well, but yeah, I agree 100% with you. I think it's really unfortunate that, and it's the same thing with like, you'll read like with telemetry and stuff, someone doesn't use their telemetry right or whatever, or has an issue, and all of a sudden it's somebody else's fault. Maybe they flew their bird too fat in the first place and they weren't going to get their bird back anyway, regardless of whether or not they had telemetry on them or not. I mean, like it all comes back to the personal accountability thing. So I agree with you 100% that there's no real excuse why you should be mad at somebody else for that kind of circumstance. Buy more hoods.
Yeah, buy more hoods. Whether you buy them, from a hoodmaker in North America or the UK, or from the Middle East, or from eBay, just have lots of hoods, and or stick to your guns. You want to catch a big female redtail, catch a big female redtail. But it's tough when it's your very first bird.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I mean, and some people, man, just with the variety of red tails, especially that you can run into, anywhere, since they're so prevalent, it's just like, I would hate to think what the amount of gas that I would spend, trying to trap a bird that fits a hood rather than,
exactly.
having, an assortment of hoods that would potentially fit a bird that I would trap on the first try, like, I don't know. Anyway. But no, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad that you went that route with that line of thought. And, I guess now would be a good time. You've already given quite a bit of advice, good pieces of advice throughout this. We've already kind of got that base covered, and you've already told a couple good stories too, but like, I do want to get like that memorable flight or memorable experience that you had that always kind of is at the forefront of each falconer's mind, as far as the particular flight, hunting experience, or experience with a particular bird they had that, there always seems to be at least one or two that always stick with us as falconers. So,
well, that I mentioned previously, but I had a male rehab bald eagle, loved chasing deer. And I can remember one time, it was a long flight, a long time ago, but a long flight. And I raced back to get into my truck. And the landowner saw me, came driving out in the field. What's wrong? What's wrong? You're running. Oh, my bird's chasing a deer down the road here. And so I got into his truck and we're driving down all these grid roads. Finally, we see a truck in the middle of the road beside a little bridge. And we came up and I said, "Have you seen an eagle?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's right over there. And it's sitting on a deer." And I went, "You're kidding." I said, "What happened?" And he goes, "Yeah, it was just like National Geographic. This bird was grabbing this deer's head and the deer ran under this little bridge and hid. And then the eagle got up and there was a dead deer on the other side of the road. So the eagle flew across the road and started ripping at this deer. And I can remember, I thought, when I first pulled up, I went, "There's no way it caught a deer. There's no way." And pinned it down on the ground. No way. And as it turned out, the deer was dead, and it was the bird was feeding on it. And that rehab bird, I flew it for about another week or two, and the bird would go up into a soar, and I had to use the telemetry, and I'd find it on a carcass. So the last time I said, "Well, I've done all I can." They're carrion feet. They eat a lot of carrion. I cut the jesses off, cut the anklets off, and I just let the bird go. It was sitting on his deer. And I was probably the craziest, only because of the landowner's shock in his eyes. It was like, what did I just see? So that's one. And the same landowner, I was running, trying to keep up with the jackrabbit and the falcon. There were no dogs involved. And I came up down the little gully in the road, came up, and I did a 360 somersault flying in the air. And he pulls up and he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I explained this situation. He goes, "That was the best dive I've ever seen." so, so those are two flights that really come to mind over the years. One with an eagle and one with a falcon without the dogs.
That's good stuff. Well, I mean, I have to ask, I mean, whenever you came up there and saw it like on there, or heard that it was on the deer and stuff, was there a moment there where you were just like, super duper stoked, and then like were you ultra let down? Like were you ultra just like heart kind of just sank and you're just like, oh yeah, whenever you found out it was an
incredible high and then an incredible low. Like you said, it's sitting. Have you seen an eagle? Yeah, it's sitting right here. And I looked and went, no way, there's no way. And then it was like, I did it. Wasn't ever trying to hunt deer with it. And then when he told me that the other deer is underneath the little bridge, and the deer had been sitting there dead, I went, okay. Yeah, well, the bird's doing what he's supposed to do. I guess I've done okay. But it was just the look in the guy's eye. And it was right beside a golf course. So it was like, it was in the fall, obviously. And I thought, well, I hope somebody saw that. And that was way before GoPro and all that stuff. So, but I was patting myself on the back for about 10 seconds, and then I realized what had happened.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I out of curiosity, what was wrong initially with that eagle that you had at rehab?
This one, they just found it side of the road, starving. And they had about 7 of them at the time. They would always have several eagles, some that were taken illegally and imprinted, but the bird was just found underweight. And I was able to get a permit to rehab the bird. That was the second one. I had a big female that I flew for 2 years, and I was hoping they were going to give me a permit because she was a great bird. Loved taking geese. She would hunt down geese like mad, and take them. But the government would not give us permits for eagles, especially the rehab birds. And so this particular male was available, and I thought, okay, we'll try something different. Terribly hard bird to man, but probably one of my most favorite birds that I had.
Well, cool. Well, I mean, that's probably a pretty good note to end this particular conversation on, I think. I mean, you've shared a lot of really good stuff in this, and thanks again for sharing your time. Are you willing to stick on here for a little bit longer and talk about some of the different mistakes and learning experiences that you've made and had during your time in falconry a little bit? How much more time do you have? Do you have other stuff you need to do?
I'm retired. I've got hoods drying on the block that don't need any attention. So fire away.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and end this particular conversation and then head straight into that one. And thank you again for having it, Ken. It's been nice talking.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I didn't realize you made that many podcasts. I was shocked, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just kept counting and going, wow, I feel honored that he's asked me to come aboard. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. And like I said, thanks for your time. And we'll pick this up here in just a few.
Okay.